Ever wonder why getting back into a hobby that you used to love feels a lot like wading through quicksand? A big part of this feeling comes from the way that dopamine affects motivation. And understanding how this dynamic actually works can be really helpful at breaking through that block. So let's talk about it. Now, a lot of people know that dopamine is that pleasure hormone that gives you that reward feeling after you've gotten a positive result from doing something. And some people may also know that you actually need to get a boost in dopamine before you feel motivation, right? Motivation doesn't happen in a vacuum. You don't just spontaneously feel motivated to do something. You have to do something, get a positive result, and get a boost in dopamine before motivation happens. And if that's your understanding, then it probably feels pretty mysterious as to why you don't feel motivated to do something that you used to love doing, that you know is going to be rewarding, that you know you're going to enjoy. But there's one little detail about how dopamine works that most people don't know that describes this dynamic perfectly. And that is that the size of the boost in dopamine that you get from doing an activity is not always related to the amount of pleasure you get from doing that activity. Instead, the size of the dopamine boost is determined by how well your expectation matches the reality of what you experience. So specifically, it works like this. If you go into an activity and you don't have a lot of expectations about what that experience is going to be like, and you have an overwhelmingly positive experience, you get a massive boost in dopamine. Or in other words, if your experience is much better than your expectation. Now, if you go into an activity expecting a good result and you get a result that matches your expectation, then you may get a little blip in dopamine, but largely it just keeps dopamine levels stable. There's no huge boost from that. Now, the third scenario is if you go into an activity expecting a good result and you don't get a good result, so the reality is worse than your expectation, then not only do you not get a boost in dopamine, but you get a dip in dopamine that actively demotivates you from continuing to participate in that activity. So if we were going to take that and apply this to the topic of hobbies, let's say that you used to be really good at guitar and you used to play all the time and you loved it, but you haven't played in 5 years. More than likely, the experience of picking that guitar back up and dusting off the cobwebs is going to be a little bit frustrating. You're not going to play as well as you used to, and playing is not going to feel as good as it used to. But in your mind, you're holding on to what it felt like to play guitar when you were practiced at it. So you're going in with the expectation of a certain level of proficiency, and your experience is probably going to be frustration. And so when that happens, you are, again, being demotivated from engaging in that activity in the future. So how can we break through that mental block? Tip 1 is to check your expectation. Have a very realistic expectation, or ideally have no expectation of what it's going to be like to engage in that hobby again. And if that's not tickling your fancy, number 2 is to try to engage in that hobby in a new way that feels novel, that you don't have any expectation about. So if you like to do visual arts, for example, and you were very practiced at a certain medium, can you try engaging with art with a new medium that you're not practiced with? So give it a try and let me know how it goes.